Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Elke Van Asbroeck, Managing Director of Apeiron team, and before we started the company, I worked for 12 years in industry, more specifically in the waste and recycle industry and afterwards in the polymer industry. Today I want to share with you our insights in the authorization process on basis of two dossiers. On the one hand, Vlisco in the textile industry, where they work with trichloroethylene, a non-threshold carcinogen, where we asked for 12 years review period and received recently a draft opinion for 12 years. And on the other hand, Parker, also on trichloroethylene, this is in the aviation industry, where we are anxiously awaiting the draft opinion at the moment. But let's start at the beginning of the process. You are using a substance that recently came on the authorization list, so you know you have to make a CSR, an AOA, and a SEA. What we do for our clients to arrive successfully is anticipating the pitfalls. And what can pitfalls be? How will you minimize emissions, as an example? How will you explain the economical feasibility on basis of revenues or on basis of profits? And how will you define a credible non-use scenario? Well, the first step of authorization, as it was mentioned also by Frida, is comically how to avoid authorization. When there is a potential alternative in the pipeline, you might want to ask yourself, when can I get it implemented? And preferentially before the sunset date or the latest application date. But this is not always possible, like in case of HBCDD, where the substance is not available on the market in enough volume. We look at this together with our clients and make the cost assessment together with them. Basically, what is the cost of the switch in comparison to the cost of the authorization? And in 2 cases already, the decision was in the end made together with our clients that they did not have to go for authorization. But this is not always possible. Now, the cost of authorization is dependent on the strength of the case. And what makes a case strong? First of all, how safely are you using the substance? And if you have an RCR of 0.9, you might want to think twice to optimize the situation of the conditions. Secondly, is there a research program that you have followed and that you can provide evidence on? And thirdly, do the benefits outweigh the risks? With regard to safe use, you know you have to demonstrate that the emissions, that the exposure is significantly below the threshold, or for non-threshold substances, it's still there, for non-threshold substances like TCE, that the emissions are minimized. The latter is much more difficult because unfortunately, neither the regulation nor the guidance provide us a definition or criteria for minimization of emissions. In the cases of Vlisco and Parker, we have done this by providing monitoring data, as well towards workers as the environment, providing data with regard to exposure of men via the environment by means of diffusion models in combination with population spread, and by providing data that there is no exposure to consumers. On top of that, we use this information on the monitoring to rank the exposure levels of the different exposure groups. And by using this methodology, we have been able to define an additional risk management measure. This means that even though the exposure was already very, very, very low, 0.5 ppm, which is below even the BAWA threshold, industry has taken a step further by using the authorization efforts. And also this is indeed a positive effect of the authorization. Now, I want to remark that the additional risk management measure will be installed, actually already is, before the sunset date. And this is the date when the conditions become legally applicable. And on top of that, in the SEA, we use the monitoring data that were currently there before the risk management measure was installed. So industry even used the worst case to make the comparison in the SEA. On another note, it is worth mentioning that the RAC opinion on threshold or non-threshold has been extremely helpful for downstream users and has helped to reduce the cost. Now, it also is important to define the strength of the case, so therefore I would like to recommend that this becomes available as of the moment that the substance is included in the authorization list. And for PBTs, we would hope that in the future we will see a half-life for the persistence. The AOA is strong when it covers 3 elements: a description of the current and past R&D efforts, element 1. Element 2, an assessment of the alternatives starting from a long list going to a short list with the goal to identify the future research program. And last but not least, the identification of a credible non-use scenario. Now we come to the third question. Do the benefits outweigh the risks? In layman's terms, this means, is the cost for society to stop using the substance right now higher than the cost of the health risk? This means that the strength of the SEA depends on the credibility of the non-use scenario and the quality of the data, for instance, the forecasts. Okay, so we have decided to go for authorization. Do we go with partners or do we go solo? Well, it's obvious that if you go with partners that the benefit is the cost split. But is this the right way forward for you? Well, consider this. Is the time and the cost needed for contractual discussions included in your cost calculation? And what is the time and cost for the meetings to agree between the applicants? And what is the cost for the trustee to avoid competition law infringement? But most of all, how does this influence your chance to success? Because all the partners have to comply to the same conditions of the dossier, the conditions in the dossier will be based on the worst case of the group. From a positive perspective, you could say this creates an equal playing field. But this means that you step into the process blindly, and only after 6 months, you will know whether you stepped onto the Queen Mary or onto the Titanic. For Vlisco and Parker, we decided to describe the real situation on site, their process, their case. Hence, they went solo. And because we were so transparent and thorough in our description, it was easier for RAC and SEAC to follow our reasoning. So now let's start making the dossier. We need to gather data, we need to draft a CSR, a concept AOA, a concept SEA. Then we go to the PSIS meeting, and then we finalize the dossier. In total, this takes about 12 months. I heard yesterday 3. I would not recommend it. We did 1 in 7 months, and I can tell you, if you make a thorough dossier, this is already quite stressful. So what do you need to make this work? The typical industry reaction is, let's have our senior technologist to run the team, and with a little help of a consultant that has a risk assessor and an economist in-house, it will all work out. Well, this model does not work. What you need is a team. You need a team for the CSR, where you have your process engineer that knows the ins and outs of your process, an industrial hygienist, an environmental specialist, and a technologist. You need that same people for the AOA. For the SEA, you need somebody that knows the business and the market. You need a coordinator, and last but not least, you need a decision maker as go-between the team and the management. On the other side, we will help you out to strengthen your team with an expert in process technologies in general, with scientists, an economist, and somebody that helps building the strategy. And as such, we identify together with you the blind spot. Basically, we play the devil's advocate to the information that we receive from you. And we translate this highly technical and economical information into a language that is relevant for the regulator. So we have a team, now we can start working, data gathering. We facilitate this process by providing you templates and clear guidance. Step 2, drafting the CSR. This means making the calculations, looking for gaps, looking at the monitoring data, defining the exposure groups, etc. For the AOA, this means defining the functional requirements of the substance and the functional requirements of the end product, going from a long list to a short list, ranking the alternatives, defining potential future program, and defining the non-use scenario. What we don't do at this moment yet is making the detailed assessment of the risk, technical feasibility, economical feasibility, and availability. That comes later. For the concept SEA, we describe at this moment the market and the business trends, sales, and forecast, but not yet the impact assessment. Then we go to the pre-submission information session. The pre-submission information session is not obligatory, but you would be a fool not to go. It's the only opportunity you have to have direct contact with Elke and to present your case with passion. Elke wants to help good cases, and as they are the only direct contact with RAC and SEAC, they know their latest learnings and desires. So they might give you good tips to improve your dossier, which you can still do before you submit it. Hence, if you send good quality documents to Elke, this will be of great help to you. After the PSIS, we can now refine the CSR with extra data, and we can now work on the AOA. Now that we know that Elke saw how we went from a long list to a short list and doesn't have any other recommendations on that, we will calculate now risk, technical feasibility, economical feasibility, and availability of the most likely alternatives. We will rank them here and define the future program, and we will refine in a better description the non-use scenario. Then we come to the SEA, where we make the impact assessment. And for the impact assessment, we need the exposure levels from the CSR or the excess risk levels, and we need the non-use scenario for the AOA. Therefore, it can only be done after finalization of the AOA and the CSR. This is also the place where you define the length of the review period and describe it in enough detail. A good justification is necessary, definitely if you want to go to a long period. This is also the moment where you will start looking at confidentiality. So we can submit the 3 documents we worked so hard on, the BI, and 2 others of a more administrative nature, the BIU and the concordance table. Payment within 2 weeks. Be careful, if you pay 5 past 12, then all the work has been for nothing. Now is the moment you can go on holiday, and you should go on holiday, because about 1.5 months later, you will get the first batch of questions. These are from RAC and SEAC. We did not answer them lightly. We answered every question open-minded, not defending, and with additional calculations and data if so requested. We took the time and the energy to provide a thorough answer, and it did pay off. Because we were so thorough, RAC and SEAC decided that we no longer had to have a trialogue. This saved us 6 months in opinion making, and it saved us a lot of costs. Almost at the same time, the second group of questions arrived, this time from the public. Member states, NGOs, competitors, consumers, your mom, your neighbor. On the Elke website, you can find cases where there are, I heard yesterday, more than 400 comments. I saw the one with more than 200 comments for lead sulfochromate. Imagine you have to answer to all of this in 2 weeks' time. For Vlisco and Parker, we did not receive any comments. And how did we avoid these so many comments? Well, it is our belief that this comes because we anticipated the concerns of the stakeholders in our dossier. As an example, the NGOs, sometimes we disagree with them, but often we also understand their concern. And instead of rebelling against that, we decided together with our clients to incorporate answers in our dossier. But also on another level we help. We are more neutral to the technicalities, and as such we can guide the reader through the dossier, which then becomes clear, to the point, transparent, and credible. Not receiving any comments from the public was also a trigger for Rack and SEAC for not asking for a trialogue. So at this moment, our work was done, and all we could do was wait for the draft opinion. It's 10 months. Now, it is in our own interest to help Rack and SEAC to get to the truckload of information that we provide them. And how can we do this? As I said, make it to the point, transparent, clear, credible. The opposite of defensive. As a result, we received a draft opinion after 4 months only. And on top of that, we received 12 years for Vlisco, as we had asked for. And why was this little piece of paper, called the draft opinion, so important to us? Well, it is simple. The authorization process is business disruptive. It's white or black. It's go or no go. Industry has only one chance. And this is unsimilar to any other legislation. And without certainty of business continuity, there are no large investments being made and no budget for innovation. For Vlisco in particular, the reason number one why this was so crucial was that Vlisco was for sale. And who wants to buy a company that cannot guarantee business continuity? It had an immediate impact on the share value. So this little piece of paper was worth a lot. Reason number two why this was so crucial, as long as you don't have the draft opinion, you don't know whether the future will be left or right. Will it be the non-use scenario, or will it be the future R&D program? In our case, this was a very innovative and promising technology called switchable solvents, where we can also improve climate situation. So we want to go right, but as long as we didn't have the draft opinion, Vlisco didn't know where to put the money. So having submitted 3 months before the latest application window and having received the draft opinion 6 months ahead, thank you Rack and SEAC for that, we had 9 months won, not only for the economy, but also for health for man and environment. So the take-home message for industry is, you have a strong case, otherwise you would not apply. So why would you go in the defense? We took the approach to be as open and transparent as possible, and it worked. The take-home message for the regulator, help us provide the right balance of information. What are the specific criteria you use to define the length of the review period? And which elements do you want to see in the dossier for that? And which elements do you want to see go out? Some examples. Rack, you asked us why dichloroethylene was not discussed as an alternative. To us, this was evident. It's highly flammable, it's explosive, but most of all, it's on its way to become a carcinogen 1B. There is an NTP study out there that says that it has the same mode of action as TCE. So why would we even consider it? On top of that, it's under dossier evaluation for that same reason. You surely know that. So we wondered why you asked, and we didn't know. So we thought maybe they see this as a serious alternative, and we have to defend ourselves well. So we gave you the full Monty, the risk assessment, the technical feasibility, economical feasibility, and availability. It took us time and effort and cost for our client, but maybe this answer that I just gave was enough. So here I would like to suggest a telephone call to explain us why you asked the question. And then we can be more efficient in providing you an answer. Second last example, SEAC, you asked us additional calculations for 4, 7, and 12 years of the economical feasibility for different alternatives. This is not described in the guidance, but is this a requirement you see as a standard requirement for the future? If yes, just tell us and we'll provide it with pleasure. But we prefer to do it in the dossier because doing this in 2 weeks' time together with the other information is quite challenging. So if you could give us clear criteria, we could be more accurate and efficient in providing high-quality dossiers. And this will be more efficient for you as well. So basically, the message to industry and the regulator is the same. Be transparent, and a mist might disappear. Thank you for your attention and looking forward for your questions.